He shed the billionaire's suit to surprise his fiancée, but what he uncovered shattered his world. Some secrets are deadly, and this one could destroy everything. Will love survive the truth? Welcome back, my amazing family and friends. If you're ready to dive into this unforgettable story, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Tomorrow, I'll bring you another incredible tale you absolutely can't miss. Let's get started, and don't forget to like and share to help our community grow. The crystal chandelier in the boardroom cast fractured rainbows across the mahogany table, but Kingsley Ashford saw only numbers. £7 billion. That's what the Manchester property acquisition would add to Ashford Global's portfolio, cementing his position not just as Britain's youngest self-made billionaire, but as an empire unto himself. At 34, he'd built something his lorry driver father could never have imagined during those cold Newcastle nights when they'd shared tinned beans for dinner. Brilliant work, Kingsley, Richard Chen, his CFO, said, closing the leather portfolio. Your instincts were spot on. Again. Kingsley nodded, barely hearing the praise. His instincts. Yes, those had made him rich. But lately, they whispered warnings about something far more valuable than commercial real estate. His phone vibrated against the polished wood. Tina's name illuminated the screen alongside a photo, her luminous smile captured last month at the charity gala, emerald dress matching her eyes, looking every bit like she belonged in his world of champagne and privilege. Missing you. Dinner tonight? I'll cook your favorite. XX. His chest tightened with something between warmth and unease. 3 years together. 18 months engaged. The wedding planned for Saturday week at Thornbury Castle, every detail magazine perfect. Yet somewhere beneath his tailored shirts and expensive cologne, that boy from Newcastle Council Estates couldn't quite believe that Tina Whitmore, Cambridge-educated, graceful, stunning Tina, loved him rather than what he'd become. You all right, mate? Richard's voice cut through his thoughts. Fine. Kingsley stood, straightening his Tom Ford tie. Just ready to be done for the day. The drive from the city to his Kensington penthouse usually calmed him, the Tesla's silent glide through London's organized chaos, leaving the weight of business behind. But today, the unease followed him like a shadow. He'd given Tina everything, a black American Express card she rarely used, a wardrobe full of designer clothes, access to his homes in London, Cotswolds, and Monaco. She'd accepted it all with gracious smiles and soft kisses, never demanding more. Never demanding anything, actually. That was the problem, wasn't it? The thought had been growing like a weed through cracks in concrete. She was perfect. Too perfect? He hated himself for the question, yet couldn't silence it. The penthouse smelled of roasted rosemary and garlic when he entered. Tina emerged from the kitchen, flour dusting her cheek, looking more beautiful in his old Oxford shirt than she had in that £10,000 gala gown. You're early. She kissed him, tasting of the wine she'd been cooking with. I'm making your mum's shepherd's pie. Hope I do it justice. You remembered. His mother's recipe, the one comfort from childhood he'd shared during a vulnerable midnight conversation months ago. Of course I remembered. Her smile flickered, or had he imagined it? Every detail about you matters to me, Kingsley. They ate on the terrace overlooking Hyde Park, the May evening gilding everything gold. Tina told him about her day volunteering at the Literacy Centre in Brixton, her passion for teaching adults to read lighting up her features. He told her about Manchester, watching her genuine interest, her thoughtful questions. This was real, wasn't it? This connection? 10 days, she said softly, her hand finding his across the table. 10 days until I'm Mrs. Ashford. Having second thoughts. He meant it as a joke, but something razor-sharp edged the words. Her eyes met his, forest green and fathomless. Never. You're everything I've ever wanted, Kingsley. You have to know that. He wanted to believe her. God, how he wanted to. Later, after she'd fallen asleep against his chest, her breathing soft and even, Kingsley stared at the ceiling and let the poisonous thoughts run wild. What did she really do during those long afternoons when he was consumed by business? The Literacy Centre closed at 3. She often didn't answer his calls until evening. She'd been distracted lately, distant in moments when she thought he wasn't watching. His phone glowed on the nightstand. Against every instinct of trust, he reached for it, pulling up his private investigator's contact. Marcus Davies had done background checks for business acquisitions, nothing more. But he could. No. Kingsley set the phone down. He wasn't that man, the one who spied on the woman he loved. Except, what if he didn't really know her at all? What if, beneath the flower-dusted cheeks and charity work, Tina was exactly what his Newcastle cynicism had always suspected, another person who saw only the billions, not the boy who'd worn second-hand shoes to school? What would you do if you had unlimited resources to test someone's love? Would you use them, or would that very test prove you weren't worthy of love at all? Drop your thoughts below. The idea came to him at dawn, watching London wake up from his floor-to-ceiling windows. Disguise himself. Not some shallow catfish scheme, but a genuine transformation. Become ordinary, unremarkable, the man he'd have been without the lucky breaks and brutal work ethic. Meet Tina in that context. See how she treated someone without power, without wealth. See who she really was when Kingsley Ashford, billionaire, wasn't watching. It was insane. Manipulative. Possibly cruel. He was going to do it anyway. By Wednesday, the transformation was complete. Marcus had been bewildered but professional, arranging everything. A modest flat in Clapham under the name James Crawford, complete with utility bills and a national insurance number. Wardrobe from Primark and charity shops. A battered Ford Focus. Contact lenses replacing his usual designer frames. Temporary hair dye darkening his sandy blonde to unremarkable brown. Subtle makeup aging him slightly, roughening his too-polished appearance. Standing in that Clapham bathroom, Kingsley examined his reflection and barely recognized himself. James Crawford, freelance IT consultant, struggling to make ends meet in expensive London, looked back at him. The costume was perfect. The lie felt like ash in his mouth. He told Tina he had an emergency acquisition in Berlin, would be gone 3 days. She'd hugged him at the door, worry creasing her brow. Be safe. I love you. I love you too. The words felt like a prayer and an apology. Now, Thursday morning, Kingsley, no, James, sat in a cafe across from Tina's usual yoga studio in Notting Hill, hands wrapped around a cheap coffee that tasted like betrayal. She'd be emerging any minute now, and he'd, what? Bump into her? Strike up a conversation? He hadn't thought this through, running on instinct and desperation. The studio door opened. Tina emerged in black leggings and a fitted jacket, gym bag slung over her shoulder, looking like every other beautiful woman in this neighborhood. Except she wasn't every other woman. She was his. Or was she? She checked her phone, and something flickered across her face. Anxiety? No, something deeper. Fear. Before Kingsley could process it, she was moving, not toward the tube or the penthouse, but west, walking quickly, checking over her shoulder twice. His pulse quickened. This wasn't the leisurely post-yoga stroll of someone with a clear conscience. He followed, maintaining distance, the investigator skills Marcus had hastily taught him, feeling surreal. 3 blocks. 5. They'd left the polished storefronts of Notting Hill for something grittier, Ladbroke Grove, where gentrification's gleam hadn't quite reached every corner. Tina stopped at a modest brick building, its blue door paint peeling. She pulled out keys Kingsley had never seen, and let herself in. His heart was a hammer against his ribs. A secret flat. She had a secret flat. All those afternoons, all those unreturned calls. The rational part of his brain screamed to leave, to end this before he saw something that couldn't be unseen. But his feet carried him forward, past the point of redemption, toward whatever truth waited behind that blue door. He didn't have to wait long. 20 minutes later, the door opened again. But Tina wasn't alone. A man emerged behind Tina from the blue door, tall, lean, probably late 20s, with a kind of careless attractiveness that didn't require effort or expensive grooming. He wore a medical mask pulled down around his chin, and even from across the street, Kingsley could see the unhealthy pallor of his skin, the slight tremor in his hands as he gripped the doorframe. But that wasn't what made Kingsley's world tilt on its axis. It was the way Tina touched him, her hand cupping his face with a tenderness Kingsley recognized because she'd touched him that way 1,000 times. The intimacy of it. The familiar affection. She said something that made the man smile weakly, and then she reached into her handbag, pulling out an envelope. Money. She was giving him money. The man hesitated, then took it, his shoulders sagging with what looked like relief or shame or both. Tina hugged him, not a casual embrace, but the kind that said, "I've got you, I'm here, we'll get through this." The kind of hug you gave someone who mattered. Someone who mattered more. Kingsley's coffee cup hit the pavement, lukewarm liquid splashing across his borrowed trainers. He didn't notice. Couldn't breathe. The morning sounds of London, traffic, construction, someone's radio playing too loud, all faded into a high-pitched ringing in his ears. 3 years. 18 months engaged. 10 days from their wedding. And she had someone else. Someone she kept in a secret flat, someone she gave money to, someone she looked at with eyes that were supposed to be only for him. The man went back inside. Tina remained on the step, her hand pressed against the door as if drawing strength from the wood. Then she straightened, wiped at her eyes. Was she crying? And walked away in the opposite direction. Kingsley stood frozen on that Ladbroke Grove Street corner, his carefully constructed disguise suddenly feeling less like an experiment and more like a prophecy. Maybe this was who he really was, not the billionaire in the penthouse, but the fool in charity shop clothes, watching the woman he loved walk away with secrets that tasted like lies. His phone buzzed. Tina's name flashed on the screen. Berlin treating you well? Missing you terribly. Can't wait until you're home and we can finalize the last wedding details. Only 10 days. 2 hearts. The emoji felt obscene. The casualness of it, the performance of missing him while she'd just been, what? Paying off a lover? Funding a second life he knew nothing about? Kingsley's hand shook as he pocketed the phone without responding. Every instinct screamed to storm into that building, to rip away whatever charade she was performing. But beneath the rage and betrayal, something else whispered, something that sounded dangerously like his father's voice from 25 years ago. Son, things aren't always what they seem. Rich or poor, everyone's carrying something heavy. Question is whether you've got the courage to help them carry it or just walk away. His father, who'd worked himself into an early grave so Kingsley could have opportunities. His father, who'd never judged, never assumed, always looked deeper. But his father had also died never knowing that his childhood sweetheart, Kingsley's mother, had been having an affair for the last 5 years of his life. Trust was how good people got destroyed. Kingsley pulled out his phone again, this time calling Marcus. I need everything, he said, his voice not quite steady. The building at 47 Ladbroke Grove, flat number unknown. Who lives there, who pays for it, financials, everything. And I need it today. Kingsley. Today, Marcus. Whatever it costs. He hung up and stared at the blue door. The rational part of his brain, the part that had built a billion-pound empire, knew he should wait for facts, for evidence, for Marcus's report. But rationality had left him the moment he'd seen Tina's hand on another man's face. He'd come this far. Worn this disguise. Betrayed her trust by spying in the first place. Might as well see it through to the bitter end. The building had 6 flats, their buzzers labeled with surnames that meant nothing to him. He waited, leaning against the Ford Focus, until an elderly woman with a shopping trolley approached the blue door. Let me help you with that, love, he said, adopting the broader working-class accent Marcus had coached him on. Not his natural Newcastle lilt, too distinctive, but something universal and forgettable. Oh, thank you, dear. She smiled, producing her keys. These bags get heavier every year, I swear. He carried her shopping up to the 2nd floor, making small talk about the weather, the state of the buses, the price of everything these days. At her door, he set down the bags and casually asked, You know the young woman in flat 4? Thin, pretty, dark hair? Think I went to school with her sister. Tina? Lovely girl, that one. Been coming around for months now, always so kind. Terrible situation with her brother. Poor thing. Brother. The word hit Kingsley like a physical blow. Right, yes, terrible, he managed, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. Her brother. How is he doing? The old woman shook her head, sadness creasing her weathered face. Not well, I'm afraid. Cancer, they say, though she doesn't talk about it much. Just comes by most days. Brings him food, medicine. Saw her carrying him to hospital appointments when he was too weak to walk. That's family, isn't it? She'll do anything for him. Brother. Cancer. Hospital. The street tilted. Kingsley gripped the banister, nodes of information rearranging themselves into a completely different picture. Not a lover. A brother. A sick brother she'd never mentioned, in a flat she'd kept secret, with medical bills she was somehow handling alone despite having access to his unlimited wealth. Why? You all right, love? The old woman peered at him with concern. Fine. Yes. Just give them my best, yeah? Unless. He descended the stairs on autopilot, pushed through the blue door, and made it exactly 3 steps before his knees gave out. He sat down hard on the pavement, his head in his hands, trying to process the avalanche of implications. She had a brother with cancer. She'd never told him. Never asked for help, never mentioned it once in 3 years together. She was funding it herself, those envelopes of cash, the secrecy, the afternoon disappearances. Why? Why suffer alone when he could have paid for the best oncologists in the world with a single phone call? Unless she thought he'd believe exactly what he believed 10 minutes ago. That she was using him, that any crisis was just another con to access his money. Unless she loved him enough to protect him from even the possibility of doubt. Or unless she didn't trust him at all. The irony was a knife between his ribs. He disguised himself to test her honesty while she'd been hiding the truth to protect. What? His peace of mind? Her pride? The fragile trust between them that his very disguise had already shattered? If someone you loved was secretly suffering, would you want them to tell you, even if it meant looking like they needed your money? Or is protecting someone from doubt sometimes the greater act of love? Let us know what you think. Kingsley's phone buzzed again. Marcus, probably, with preliminary information. But when he looked at the screen, it was Tina, calling this time. He let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Watched her name flash and fade. What could he possibly say? Hi, darling, I'm actually not in Berlin. I'm sitting on a pavement in Ladbroke Grove wearing a disguise because I didn't trust you. And by the way, why didn't you tell me your brother is dying? The call went to voicemail. Seconds later, a text. Everything okay? You never ignore my calls. Getting worried. Love you. Love you. Did she? Could you really love someone you kept such massive secrets from? Could you love someone you didn't trust enough to be vulnerable with? Could you love someone you disguised yourself to spy on? Kingsley stood, brushed off his cheap jeans, and made a decision. He'd started this deception, he'd see it through. But now the mission had changed. He wasn't looking for evidence of betrayal anymore. He was looking for the truth about who Tina really was beneath the perfect fiancé facade. And more terrifyingly, he was going to have to confront who he really was beneath the billionaire disguise. Someone who'd doubted her. Someone who'd trusted wealth and control more than love. Someone who might have just destroyed the best thing that ever happened to him. The blue door opened again. The man, Tina's brother, stood framed in the doorway, pulling a jacket over his thin frame with obvious effort. Up close, Kingsley could see he was younger than he'd first appeared, maybe 25, with Tina's same green eyes sunken in a face that illness had carved gaunt. Their eyes met. You need something, mate. The brother's voice was hoarse but not unfriendly. Kingsley's mind raced. This was insane. He should leave, should wait for Marcus's report, should. Actually, yeah, he heard himself say. I'm a bit lost. Looking for the tube station. Latimer Road's closest. 2 blocks that way. The brother pointed, then swayed slightly, gripping the doorframe. You all right? Kingsley stepped forward instinctively, the caretaker in him overriding everything else. Just tired. A weak smile. Chemo does that. I'm Alex, by the way. James. The lie felt heavier than before. That's rough, mate. You got someone helping you out. Alex's face softened into something that looked like love and sadness mixed together. My sister. She's everything. Does more than I deserve, honestly. Won't let me thank her properly, won't accept help from anyone. Stubborn as hell. Sounds like quite a woman. She is. Getting married soon, actually. To some rich bloke. Alex's tone was neutral, but something flickered in his expression. Worry? Hope he's good enough for her. Hope he knows what he's got. The words were a blade sliding between Kingsley's ribs. I'm sure he does, he managed. Yeah, well. Rich guys sometimes don't see what's right in front of them. You know? Too busy counting money to count blessings. Alex pulled his jacket tighter. Anyway, sorry to bend your ear. I should get going. Pharmacy closes at 6. You need any help? Getting there, I mean. Alex studied him for a moment, this stranger offering kindness on a random Thursday afternoon. Nah, I'm good. But thanks, James. Not everyone stops to ask. Kingsley watched him walk away, each step an obvious effort, and felt something crack open in his chest. This was what Tina had been protecting, not a secret lover or a hidden life, but a dying brother who needed her. A brother she loved enough to shoulder the burden alone rather than risk her fiancé thinking she was after his money. She'd chosen pride over partnership, secrecy over shared pain, and he'd chosen suspicion over trust, control over vulnerability. They'd both been wearing disguises, he realized. His was just more literal. His phone rang. Marcus this time. Got some preliminary information, the investigator said. Flats leased under Alexander Whitmore, 25 years old, Tina's younger brother. Terminal cancer diagnosis 18 months ago, right around when you two got engaged, actually. Treatment costs have been astronomical. I'm still digging into the financials, but Kingsley. Marcus paused. She's been working a second job. Nights, at a private nursing agency in Kensington. And there are some loans, from people you don't want to be indebted to. High-interest stuff. Dangerous people. The world snapped into sharp, horrifying focus. 18 months. She'd known her brother was dying for 18 months, their entire engagement, and said nothing. She'd been working nights, exhausting herself, going into debt with loan sharks, all while planning a wedding and pretending everything was perfect. How much does she owe? Kingsley's voice was barely a whisper. Ballpark? £150,000. Maybe more. Enough to ruin her. Not enough to even make a dent in his accounts. He spent more than that on watches. Marcus, I need. One more thing, Marcus interrupted. The wedding. She's been paying for most of it herself. Told the vendors her fiancé wanted her to handle it, to feel invested. But Kingsley, she's been liquidating everything. Savings, investments, even her grandmother's jewelry. She's going into this marriage with nothing but debt and secrets. Kingsley ended the call and sat back down on the pavement, his carefully constructed world crumbling into truth's harsh light. Tina hadn't been testing him. She'd been protecting him, from doubt, from obligation, from the possibility that he might think she was like every other person who saw him as a wallet with a heartbeat. She'd been protecting herself, too, from the vulnerability of needing him. From the risk that asking for help might prove his worst suspicions right. They'd both been so busy protecting themselves that they'd forgotten what love actually required, the terrifying courage to be completely, devastatingly seen. And in 10 days, they were supposed to get married. 10 days to either fix this or walk away from the only woman he'd ever loved. 10 days to decide if he was brave enough to drop every disguise, the clothes, the suspicion, the wealth, the control, and just be Kingsley Ashford from Newcastle, who'd once been poor and powerless and loved anyway. His phone buzzed with another text from Tina, really worried now. Please just let me know you're safe. Kingsley stared at the message for a long time. Then, with shaking fingers, he typed back, I'm safe. Be home tomorrow. We need to talk. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, okay. I love you. I love you too. And for the first time since he'd put on this disguise, Kingsley meant it without question. The problem was whether love would be enough to survive what came next. Kingsley didn't go back to the penthouse that night. Instead, he sat in the Clapham flat he'd rented for James Crawford, surrounded by IKEA furniture and the ghosts of who they both really were. Marcus's full report lay spread across the cheap laminate table. Bank statements, medical bills, employment records, loan agreements with names that made his blood run cold. The Kozlov brothers. Ukrainian loan sharks operating out of East London, known for exorbitant interest rates and brutal collection methods. Tina had borrowed from them 5 months ago when Alex's treatment had escalated to experimental therapy not covered by NHS. The initial $50,000 had ballooned to $173,000 with their compound interest structure. Payment was due in full next Friday, the day before their wedding. Kingsley's hands clenched around his whiskey glass, cheap stuff from Tesco that burned going down but didn't dull the edge of his racing thoughts. How had she planned to handle this? Walk down the aisle knowing that on Monday, men who broke kneecaps for late payments would come looking for her? Had she planned to finally tell him, to ask for help with 48 hours to spare? Or had she planned to disappear? The thought made him physically ill. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through their messages from the past months, reading them with new eyes. Every I love you now carried the weight of what she hadn't said. Every photo she'd sent, smiling at the charity gala, laughing at Sunday brunch, modeling her wedding dress, was a performance hiding an underwater current of desperation. "You look exhausted lately. Everything okay?" he'd texted 6 weeks ago. "Just excited about the wedding. So much to organize. Love you XX. Lies. She'd been exhausted because she was working 16-hour days between the literacy center and night shifts at the nursing agency, then visiting Alex, all while planning a wedding she was funding by selling her grandmother's jewelry. His phone rang. Tina's photo filled the screen. That picture from the charity gala, emerald dress, £1,000,000 smile, secret desperation. "Hi," he answered, his voice carefully neutral. "Kingsley." Relief flooded her voice. "I've been so worried. You sounded strange in your text. Is Berlin okay? The acquisition." "It's fine. Just complicated." The lie tasted like poison now. "How are you?" "Good. I finalized the flower arrangements today. White roses and peonies, just like we discussed. And I picked up your suit from the tailor. It looks incredible." Her enthusiasm was forced, brittle around the edges. "Only 9 days now. Can you believe it? 9 days until she married him under the weight of secrets that could kill her. Literally. Tina." His voice came out rougher than intended. "Are you happy?" Silence stretched between them, miles and secrets and the space between what they showed each other and who they really were. "What kind of question is that?" She laughed, but it was off-key. "Of course I'm happy. I'm marrying you." "But are you happy? Not the wedding, not the future, right now, today, are you okay?" Kingsley, where is this coming from?" He wanted to tell her everything. Wanted to scream that he knew, that he'd seen her at the Blue Door, that he knew about Alex and the loans and the night shifts and every terrible secret she'd been carrying alone. Wanted to grab her and shake her and demand to know why she hadn't trusted him. But he was calling from a burner phone in a flat she didn't know existed, wearing a disguise he hadn't removed, living his own lie. "Just missing you," he said instead. "And wanting to make sure you know you can tell me anything. Anything at all." Her breath caught. For a moment, he thought she'd break, thought the truth would come spilling out like water from a cracked dam. "I know," she said softly. "I love you, Kingsley. More than you probably understand." "Then why won't you let me help you?" He wanted to scream. "Why won't you let me in? I love you too. I'll be home tomorrow afternoon." After they hung up, Kingsley sat in the dark and made a decision. He couldn't confront her, not yet, not like this, not while he was knee-deep in his own deception. But he could investigate. Could understand the full scope of what she was facing. Could figure out how to fix this without making her feel like he'd been spying, judging, doubting her. Could somehow thread the needle between protecting her and betraying her trust further. At dawn, he was back on Ladbroke Grove, watching the Blue Door. Tina arrived at 7:30, carrying a bag from Pret, breakfast for Alex, probably. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. She was inside for 40 minutes, and when she emerged, she was crying. Kingsley's hands gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. Every instinct screamed to go to her, to drop this insane charade and just hold her. But he couldn't. Not yet. Not until he understood everything. She didn't go to the literacy center. Instead, she took the tube to Kensington, emerging outside an elegant Georgian building that Marcus's report had identified as the Kensington Care Agency, where Tina worked nights as a private nurse, a job that paid well but required credentials she'd somehow acquired without him noticing. Kingsley watched her enter through the staff entrance, then checked his watch. She'd work until 3, then rush to visit Alex again before coming home to the penthouse to play the role of happy fiancé. The logistics of her double life were staggering. His phone buzzed. "Marcus, got more information on the Kozlov situation. It's worse than I thought. They've been adding fees, insurance, they call it. She misses this payment. They've got legal paperwork giving them rights to seize assets, including property she doesn't own yet." "What property?" "Yours." She listed the Cotswolds house as collateral. Forged some documents making it look like she had co-ownership. They won't hold up legally, but the Kozlovs don't usually go to court, they just take what they think they're owed. And they think they're owed your house. Kingsley's blood turned to ice. She hadn't just endangered herself. She'd forged documents, committed fraud, put his assets at risk. The woman he'd thought he knew, the perfect Tina with her charity work and gentle smiles, had been desperate enough to break laws. When someone you love makes terrible choices to save someone else, does the nobility of their intention erase the wrongness of their actions? Where's the line between sacrifice and self-destruction? He should have been furious. Should have felt vindicated in his suspicions. But all he felt was crushing sadness for how alone she must have felt, how desperate, to see forgery and fraud as her only options. At 3:15, Tina emerged from the agency, looking even more drained. But instead of heading to Alex's flat, she turned east, toward Shoreditch. Kingsley followed, his stomach knotting with dread. She stopped at a warehouse converted into expensive lofts. The kind of place where tech entrepreneurs and crypto traders lived, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. She stood outside for a full 5 minutes, staring up at the third floor, before finally pressing a buzzer. A man's voice crackled through the intercom. "Tina, come up." Kingsley's world tilted again. Who was this? Another secret? Another layer to her hidden life? She was inside for 20 minutes. When she emerged, she was crying again, but harder this time, her shoulders shaking with sobs she'd been holding back. She collapsed onto a nearby bench, her face in her hands, and Kingsley's resolve finally shattered. He couldn't watch anymore. Couldn't let her suffer alone for one more second. Disguise be damned. He was halfway across the street when the loft door opened again. A man emerged, late 30s, expensive casual clothes, the kind of effortless wealth that didn't need to advertise itself. He sat beside Tina on the bench, not touching her, but close. "You know what you have to do," he said, his voice carrying across the quiet street. "I can't," Tina whispered. "I can't tell him. He'll think you're human. That you're facing an impossible situation. Tina, you can't keep this up. The wedding is in 9 days. You're going to walk down that aisle with all of this hanging over you. What choice do I have?" Her voice broke. "If I tell him about Alex, about the money, he'll know I've been lying for 18 months. He'll think I'm exactly what everyone warned him about, some gold digger who saw a meal ticket. Or he'll understand. He loves you. Does he? Or does he love the version of me I've shown him? The perfect fiancé who doesn't need anything, doesn't ask for anything." She wiped her eyes viciously. "I've built this whole persona. David. The woman who fits into his world, who makes his life better without complicating it. If I tell him the truth now, then you give him the chance to love the real you." Tina laughed bitterly. "The real me is a fraud who forged documents and borrowed from loan sharks. The real me has a dying brother and a mountain of debt and no way out. What man wants to marry that?" David, whoever he was, put his hand over hers. "A good one. And from what you've told me, Kingsley might be exactly that. But you'll never know if you don't give him the chance. I can't lose him." Her voice was barely audible. "He's the only good thing I have left. If Alex dies, if I lose Kingsley too." She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Kingsley stood frozen on that Shoreditch street, invisible in his disguise, and felt every assumption he'd made about Tina shatter into dust. She hadn't been protecting herself from his judgment. She'd been protecting him from the burden of her reality. She'd loved him enough to carry everything alone rather than risk him feeling obligated or trapped or used. She'd loved him enough to hide her true self completely. And he'd loved her so little that he disguised himself to test her honesty. The irony was devastating. David stood, kissing the top of Tina's head in a brotherly way. "Think about what I said. You've got 9 days to decide if you want a marriage built on secrets or truth. Choose wisely." After he'd gone back inside, Tina sat alone on the bench for a long time. Kingsley wanted to go to her, but his feet wouldn't move. What would he say? How could he reveal himself without admitting his own deception? His phone rang, shattering the moment. "Marcus again. We've got a problem," the investigator said without preamble. "The Kozlovs know about the wedding. They're planning to show up, collect their payment in front of all your guests if necessary. Public humiliation, maximum leverage." "When did you learn this?" "Just confirmed it. They've got someone watching her, Kingsley. They know her routines, know about Alex, know everything. If she doesn't pay by Friday, they're going to make Saturday, your wedding day, a living nightmare." Kingsley's jaw clenched. Not if I pay them first. That's not how these people work. It's not about the money anymore. It's about respect, about making an example. If you swoop in and clear her debt, they'll see it as her manipulating you, proof she was using the relationship as leverage. They'll demand more, call it lost interest opportunity or some bullshit. And if you refuse, they'll hurt her. Or Alex. Or both. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Tina was trapped in a nightmare of her own making, and his wealth, the thing she'd been so desperate to not appear to want, was the only thing that could save her. But using it might prove every fear she had about why he'd doubt her. There was only one way through this. He had to come clean. Had to drop the disguise, admit what he'd done, and hope that somewhere in the wreckage of their mutual deceptions, they could find enough truth to build something real. But first, he needed to understand one more thing. After Tina left the bench, Kingsley approached the loft building and pressed the buzzer. Yeah. David's voice, suspicious now. I'm a friend of Tina's. She seemed upset. Just wanted to make sure she's okay. A long pause. Then, come up. The loft was exactly as expected. Minimalist, expensive, utterly impersonal. David stood in the center, arms crossed, studying Kingsley with the practiced eye of someone used to reading people. You don't look like one of Tina's friends, he said carefully. I'm not. I'm. Kingsley hesitated, then committed. I'm her fiancé. Kingsley Ashford. David's eyebrows shot up. In disguise. Interesting choice. You know who I am. Tina mentioned you approximately 1,000,000 times. Usually with this expression like she can't believe her luck. David tilted his head. So why are you dressed like an extra from EastEnders, following your fiancé around London? There was no judgment in the question, just curiosity. Kingsley found himself sitting on an expensive leather sofa, the disguise suddenly feeling even more ridiculous. I needed to know if she loved me or my money, he admitted. I don't know what I thought. That I'd catch her in some lie, maybe. And instead, you caught her in the truth. David poured 2 glasses of whiskey, the expensive kind this time, and handed one over. I'm David Chen, by the way. Tina's former boss at the literacy center. Been watching her destroy herself for the past 6 months, trying to be everything to everyone while asking for nothing. Tell me about Alex. For the next hour, David painted a picture that Marcus's reports had only sketched. Alex Whitmore, brilliant chemistry student at Imperial, diagnosed with aggressive leukemia at 23. Treatment had been going well until it wasn't, a relapse 18 months ago requiring experimental therapy. Their parents had died in a car accident 5 years prior, leaving Tina as Alex's only family. She was supposed to use her inheritance for the treatment, David explained. But she'd already invested most of it in her education, and what was left, she used it to pay off Alex's student loans so he wouldn't die in debt. By the time the relapse came, she had nothing. She could have asked me. Could she? David's gaze was sharp. You're a self-made billionaire who built everything from nothing. Every article about you mentions your trust issues, your careful vetting of business partners, your ironclad prenup requirements. Tina read all of that. Watched you turn away charities you thought were scams, cut off friends you suspected of using you. She was terrified that asking for help would make you see her as just another person trying to access your bank account. The words hit like bullets. Because David was right. Kingsley had built walls around his wealth, had been suspicious of everyone's motives, had prided himself on seeing through people's fake pretenses. He'd created an environment where the woman he loved felt she had to lie to avoid losing him. The Kozlovs, Kingsley said. How bad is it? David's expression darkened. Worse than she knows. They've been tracking her for weeks, taking photos, documenting her routine. I think they're planning something for the wedding. Maximum impact, maximum leverage to get more money out of her, or you. I'll handle them. Will you? Because Tina needs to be part of that conversation. Kingsley. She needs to know you know, needs to make her own choices about how to fix this. Otherwise, you're just swooping in like some billionaire savior, and she'll spend the rest of her life wondering if you married her out of obligation. The truth of it settled into Kingsley's bones. This wasn't a problem he could throw money at and make disappear. This was about trust, vulnerability, and whether 2 people who'd been lying to each other, for different reasons, but lying nonetheless, could find their way to something honest. I don't know how to fix this, Kingsley admitted. Start with honesty. Drop the disguise, literally and figuratively. Tell her what you did and why. Listen to what she did and why. Then figure out if you can both be brave enough to start over with the truth. And if the truth destroys us? David smiled sadly. Then you were never built to last anyway. Better to know now than 20 years and 3 kids into a marriage built on lies. Kingsley left the loft as the sun was setting, casting London in golden light that felt undeserved. He drove back to Kensington, to the penthouse he'd left 3 days ago as a different person. As someone who thought disguises and tests and control could protect him from the vulnerability love required. He was done hiding. Tomorrow, he'd tell Tina everything. And then they'd either build something real from the ashes of their deceptions, or he'd lose the only woman he'd ever loved. Either way, the truth couldn't wait 9 more days. But first, he had one more call to make. Marcus, he said when the investigator answered. I need you to arrange a meeting with the Kozlov brothers. Tomorrow morning. And I need you to make it very clear that Kingsley Ashford, not James Crawford, is requesting it. That's dangerous. So is marrying someone you've been lying to. Set it up. He hung up and stared at his reflection in the penthouse windows, still wearing the disguise, still pretending to be someone he wasn't. Tomorrow, he'd strip away every layer of deception. Tomorrow, they'd both have to decide if love was worth the terrifying act of being completely, honestly seen. Tonight, he'd pray they were brave enough for what came next. The Kozlov brothers operated out of a shipping warehouse in Silvertown, the kind of place where legitimate business and criminal enterprise blurred into profitable grey areas. Kingsley arrived at 9 in the morning, dressed in his own clothes for the first time in days. Tom Ford suit, Rolex, the armor of wealth he'd been born without but had earned through blood and brilliance. No more disguises. 2 men flanked the warehouse entrance, their bulk and dead eyes marking them as exactly what they were. They patted him down, thorough, professional, before escorting him through a maze of shipping containers to an office that reeked of cigarette smoke and casual menace. Victor and Dmitry Kozlov sat behind a desk that had probably been expensive in 1987. Victor, the older brother, had the face of a man who'd done terrible things and slept well anyway. Dmitry looked softer, but his eyes held the same reptilian calculation. Mr. Ashford. Victor's English was perfect, Oxford-educated, which somehow made him more threatening. We were surprised to receive your call. Miss Whitmore hasn't mentioned you as a business partner. She's not a business partner. She's my fiancée. Victor's eyebrows rose with theatrical surprise. Ah, the wealthy husband-to-be. And here we thought she was managing her brother's medical expenses all on her own. How independent of her. The subtext was clear. They knew Tina had kept them secret, knew it gave them leverage, knew it meant something was broken between the billionaire and his bride. I'm here to settle her debt, Kingsley said flatly. Name your price. Dmitry leaned back, lighting a cigarette despite the no-smoking sign on the wall. £173,000. Plus, interest accrued since yesterday. Plus, our standard early settlement fee. Call it $250,000, and we'll consider the matter closed. Done. Kingsley pulled out his phone. Give me your account details, and I'll wire it now. Not so fast. Victor held up a hand, smiling like a shark scenting blood. You see, Mr. Ashford, there's the matter of respect. Miss Whitmore came to us in desperation, promised timely payments, then missed 3 deadlines. She forged documents, your documents, to secure additional funding. That's not just a financial transaction. That's a relationship built on trust that she violated. She was desperate to save her brother's life. Noble. Doesn't change the facts. Victor stubbed out Dmitry's cigarette, a casual assertion of dominance. Here's our position. We'll accept your payment, but Miss Whitmore remains liable for future interest. Standard rate of 10% monthly, compounding. She'll owe us another $17,000 by your wedding day, and $17,000 more the month after that, until we decide the debt is satisfied. Kingsley's jaw clenched. That's extortion. That's business. She signed a contract with very specific terms. The debt is satisfied when we say it's satisfied. Unless. Victor leaned forward, his smile widening. Unless you'd like to negotiate different terms. I'm listening. We make the debt disappear completely. No future payments, no interest, clean slate. In exchange, you facilitate 3 property transactions for us through your commercial real estate division. Nothing illegal, just acquisitions in neighborhoods that are difficult for people like us to access. Your reputation opens doors, Mr. Ashford. We'd like to walk through a few of them. Money laundering. They wanted him to help them legitimize dirty money through respectable property deals. It would be subtle, probably technically legal, and would tie him to the Kozlov organization forever. No, Kingsley said. Then your fiancée remains in our debt. $17,000 a month. Indefinitely. And if she misses a payment? Victor shrugged. Well, her brother is quite vulnerable. Hospital security is surprisingly lax. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Kingsley's hands clenched into fists beneath the desk, every instinct screaming to leap across and teach these men what happened when you threatened people he loved. But that would only make things worse. I need time, he said through gritted teeth. Your wedding is in 8 days. We'll expect an answer by then. Either the first property deal is in motion, or Miss Whitmore's monthly payment is in our account. Oh, and Mr. Ashford. Victor's smile turned genuinely amused. We'll be at your wedding. Front row. We've already RSVP'd. It would be rude not to attend such a beautiful celebration of love. The drive back to Kensington was a blur of rage and calculation. The Kozlovs had outmaneuvered him, turned his wealth from a solution into another trap. If he paid, Tina would spend years under their thumb. If he didn't, they'd hurt Alex. If he agreed to their property scheme, he'd become complicit in their criminal enterprise. There was only one way out, the truth. All of it. Tina needed to know what he'd done, what he discovered, and what they were facing. Together. The penthouse was empty when he arrived. Tina was at the literacy center, living her carefully constructed double life for a few more hours. Kingsley stood in the bedroom they shared, staring at the disguise he'd left in the closet. The cheap clothes, the brown hair dye, the contact lenses. Evidence of his own deception. He pulled out his phone and texted her. Come home. Please. We need to talk. Now. 3 dots appeared immediately. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally, you're scaring me. Are you okay? No. But I will be. Just come home. 20 minutes. Kingsley used those 20 minutes to arrange evidence on the dining table like exhibits in a trial. Marcus's reports on Tina's double life, the loan documents from the Kozlovs, photos of Alex's flat, the disguise he'd worn. His own sins laid bare beside hers. When he heard her key in the lock, his heart hammered against his ribs. This was it. The moment that would either save them or end them. Tina rushed in, still wearing her volunteer clothes, her face tight with worry. Kingsley, what? She stopped dead, staring at the dining table. At the evidence of all her secrets spread out like a police investigation. The color drained from her face. What is this? The truth, he said quietly. All of it. Yours and mine. She moved closer, her hands trembling as she picked up a photo of herself outside Alex's blue door. You've been following me. You've been. Her voice broke. How long? 3 days. I disguised myself as someone else because I didn't trust you. The admission tasted like broken glass. I thought you were hiding something, thought maybe you didn't really love me, so I became James Crawford, ordinary, unremarkable, to see who you were when the billionaire wasn't watching. Tina's laugh was jagged, painful. And what did you discover, Kingsley? That I'm a liar? A fraud? A desperate woman who borrowed from criminals and forged documents with your name on them. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Congratulations. Your instincts were right. I'm exactly what you suspected. No. He moved toward her, but she stepped back, shaking her head. Don't. Don't you dare comfort me. You followed me. Disguised yourself. Investigated me like I was some business acquisition you needed to vet. Her voice rose, years of contained emotion finally erupting. Do you have any idea what these past 18 months have been like? Watching Alex die by degrees, working myself to exhaustion, drowning in debt, all while pretending to be your perfect fiancé? And you thought I was using you. I was wrong. You were cruel. She grabbed one of Marcus's reports, shaking it at him. You hired a private investigator? You couldn't just ask me if something was wrong? Couldn't just trust that I loved you? Could I? The question came out sharper than intended. You've been lying to me for 18 months. Tina. Your brother has been dying, and you never said a word. You've been working night shifts, going into debt with loan sharks, forging documents, living a completely separate life, and I was supposed to just trust that everything was fine. Yes. Her scream echoed off the penthouse walls. Yes, you were supposed to trust me. That's what love means, Kingsley. You trust even when you don't understand. You believe even when it doesn't make sense. You don't put on a disguise and spy like I'm some enemy trying to infiltrate your precious empire. The words hit like physical blows because she was right. He treated their relationship like a business deal that needed due diligence instead of a partnership that required faith. Why didn't you tell me about Alex? His voice was quieter now, raw. Why didn't you ask for help? Tina sank into a chair, her anger collapsing into exhaustion. Because I was terrified. Every article about you, every interview, you talk about people who tried to use you. The friend who asked for a loan and never spoke to you again after you said no. The ex-girlfriend who turned out to be dating you for your connections. Your cousin who embezzled from you. You've been betrayed by everyone who claimed to love you, and I. She wiped her eyes viciously. I couldn't be another person on that list. I couldn't let you look at me and wonder if I was just after your money. So instead, you destroyed yourself trying to handle it alone. Yes. Because at least that way, I knew our love was real. I knew you weren't with me out of obligation or pity. I knew that when you looked at me, you saw me, not some charity case you needed to rescue. The tragic irony of it settled between them like a third presence. She'd hidden her truth to protect their love. He'd disguised himself to test it. They'd both been so afraid of being used that they'd forgotten how to be honest. If you knew that asking for help might make someone doubt your love, would you suffer in silence or risk the vulnerability? Is protecting someone from your pain sometimes just another form of lying? Kingsley sat down across from her, suddenly exhausted. I met Alex. While I was disguised. Her head snapped up. You what? He doesn't know who I was. I bumped into him outside his flat, asked for directions. He told me about his sister, about you. Said you were getting married to some rich bloke and he hoped the guy was good enough for you. Kingsley's voice cracked. He said rich guys sometimes don't see what's right in front of them because they're too busy counting money to count blessings. Fresh tears spilled down Tina's face. He was right, Kingsley continued. I've been so focused on protecting my wealth, on making sure no one used me, that I didn't see what I actually had. A woman who loved me enough to destroy herself rather than risk me thinking she wanted my money. A woman who worked herself to exhaustion, went into debt with criminals, committed fraud, all to save her brother while protecting me from having to make a choice about helping. I wasn't protecting you, Tina said bitterly. I was protecting myself. Because if I asked and you said no, or worse, if you said yes but I saw doubt in your eyes, I couldn't have survived that. And I couldn't survive the thought that you might not really love me. He reached across the table, hovering his hand above hers, waiting for permission. We're both terrified, Tina. Both convinced we're not worthy of real love. So, we've been performing for each other. You as the perfect fiancé who needs nothing, me as the generous billionaire who gives everything. But neither of those people is real. She looked at his hand, at the question inherent in the gesture, and slowly, so slowly, placed her palm against his. The touch felt like coming home and leaping off a cliff simultaneously. I met David too, Kingsley said. Your old boss. He told me to drop the disguises and start with honesty. So here it is, all of it. I'm Kingsley Ashford from Newcastle, whose dad died thinking his wife had been faithful when she hadn't. Who got rich and built walls around his heart because poor people can't afford to be betrayed, but rich people can buy protection. Who loves you so much it terrifies him, because love is the one thing money can't control or guarantee. Who disguised himself because he's a coward who'd rather test you than trust you. Tina's grip tightened on his hand. I'm Tina Whitmore from Manchester, whose parents died and left her responsible for a baby brother when she was barely an adult herself. Who put herself through university while raising a teenager, who thought she'd finally found stability when Alex got into Imperial. Who watched him get sick and felt every cell in her body scream to fix it, to save him, no matter the cost. Who loves you so much she'd rather lie and suffer and potentially lose you than risk becoming another person who betrayed your trust. They sat there, hands linked across a table covered in evidence of their mutual deceptions, and for the first time in 18 months, there were no disguises between them. "The Kozlovs," Kingsley said finally. "I met with them this morning. It's worse than you know." He told her everything: the threats against Alex, the perpetual debt structure, the demand that he helps them launder money through property deals, their plan to attend the wedding. Watched her face crumble as each new horror registered. "I've ruined everything," she whispered. "Your reputation, your business, your—" "No." His voice was firm. "We're in this together now. No more secrets, no more handling things alone. We face the Kozlovs together. We figure out how to save Alex together. We decide if we can rebuild trust together." "How?" The word was a broken plea. "How do we come back from this? You didn't trust me. I didn't trust you. We've been lying to each other for our entire relationship." "Not our entire relationship." Kingsley stood, pulling her up with him, holding both her hands now. "The first time I saw you was at that literacy fundraiser 3 years ago. You were reading The Velveteen Rabbit to a group of adults learning to read, and you cried when you got to the part about becoming real through being loved. I fell in love with you in that moment, before you knew who I was or what I was worth. That was real, Tina. Everything after got complicated, but that moment was true." "I fell in love with you that night too," she admitted. "When you stayed after everyone else left and helped fold chairs like you were just another volunteer. You told me your dad never learned to read properly, that you'd built your empire partly to prove that poor kids from Newcastle were just as smart as rich kids from Eton. You were real that night. Vulnerable and honest and real. So we know we can do it. We've done it before." He pulled her closer, until their foreheads touched. "The question is whether we're brave enough to do it again. To drop every disguise and every protection and just be honest. Messily, terrifyingly honest." Tina pulled back enough to look him in the eyes. "I'm scared." "So am I." "What if we can't fix this?" "Then at least we'll have tried. At least we'll know." He cupped her face in his hands. "But Tina, I think we can. I think if we choose honesty over fear, vulnerability over protection, we might actually build something real. Something that doesn't shatter the first time it's tested." She was quiet for a long moment, and Kingsley felt his entire future balanced on whatever she said next. "Okay," she whispered finally. "Okay. No more disguises. No more secrets. We tell each other everything, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." "Even when it's hard," he agreed. "But Kingsley, the wedding. It's in 8 days. The Kozlovs will be there. Your family, your business associates, everyone will see. Let them see. Let them see that we're human, that we make mistakes, that we're figuring this out as we go." He smiled, and it felt like the first genuine expression he'd worn in days. "Or we postpone it. Take time to rebuild, to learn how to be honest with each other. Get married when we're ready, not because we scheduled a date before everything imploded." Relief washed across her face. "You'd postpone? Even with all the deposits, all the plans?" "I'd cancel it entirely if that's what you needed. The wedding is one day, Tina. The marriage is supposed to be forever. I want to make sure we get the foundation right before we build on it." She kissed him then, soft and salt-tasted with tears, but honest in a way their kisses hadn't been in months. No performance, no pretense, just two broken people choosing each other anyway. "I need to tell you about Alex," she said when they broke apart. "Everything. And you need to meet him properly, not as James Crawford but as yourself." "I'd like that." "He's going to hate that you investigated me." "Probably. I hate that I did it too. But he'll also probably like that you're terrified of losing me. He's protective like that." A small smile flickered across her face. "Kingsley, do you really think we can fix this?" "I think we can try. Honest question, do you want to? Even knowing what I did, knowing I didn't trust you." "I want to. Even knowing I lied to you, kept massive secrets, put us both in danger." She squeezed his hands. "But we have to really change. No more hiding when things get hard. No more trying to be perfect for each other. Deal? From now on, we're messy and honest." "Messy and honest," she repeated, like a vow. Outside the penthouse windows, London sprawled in afternoon light, Millions of people living their own complicated truths. Somewhere in Ladbroke Grove, Alex was probably sleeping, exhausted from chemo. Somewhere in Silvertown, the Kozlov brothers were plotting. Somewhere in 8 days, there was supposed to be a wedding that might not happen. But in this moment, in this room, two people who'd been strangers to each other despite sharing a bed had finally started to become real. It was a beginning. Fragile and uncertain, but real. And for now, that was enough. The drive to Ladbroke Grove felt different this time. Kingsley sat in the passenger seat of Tina's modest Volkswagen. She'd insisted on driving, a small reclamation of control after days of surveillance and secrets. No Tesla, no chauffeur, no billion-pound armor between them and the world. Just two people on their way to face the truth together. "He's going to be angry with me," Tina said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "For keeping you in the dark. For handling everything alone. Alex has been telling me for months to tell you, but I was so convinced I was protecting us both. And I'm going to have to tell him I spied on his sister while wearing a disguise," Kingsley added. "So we'll both be in the doghouse." She glanced at him, something like gratitude flickering across her face. "Thank you." "For what?" "For saying we. For making it sound like we're in this together, even when it's uncomfortable." Kingsley reached over and laced his fingers through hers. "That's what honest looks like, I think. Not pretty, not comfortable, but together." The blue door looked different in daylight without the weight of deception hanging over it. Just a door. Just a building where a young man was fighting for his life while his sister loved him enough to risk everything. Tina used her keys this time. No more pretending this place didn't exist in her life. The flat was small, a studio with medical equipment crowding the corners, prescription bottles lined up on the counter like soldiers, and photographs covering every available surface. Tina and Alex's children, their parents' wedding photo, Alex's graduation from Imperial in his too big gown and brilliant smile. A life, compressed into one room and running out of time. Alex was awake, propped up in bed with a laptop balanced on his knees. He looked worse than he had a few days ago, the chemo's toll evident in his pallor and the way his hand shook slightly as he typed. But when he saw Tina, his face lit up with a kind of love that needed no translation. Then he saw Kingsley, and his expression shifted to confusion, recognition, and something like understanding all at once. "James," he said slowly, his voice hoarse. "Except you're not James, are you?" Kingsley had the grace to look ashamed. "No. I'm Kingsley. Tina's fiancé. And I owe you an apology for the deception." "He knows." Tina moved to her brother's side, adjusting his pillows with practiced care. "I'm sick, not stupid," Alex said, but there was no heat in it. The expensive watch he didn't realize was showing under his cheap jacket. The way he held himself, like someone used to people listening when he talks. And mostly, the way he looked at you, T. Like you hung the moon but he was terrified you'd take it down again. Alex coughed, and Tina was there instantly with water. After he'd caught his breath, he studied Kingsley with unsettling directness. "So, the billionaire fiancé finally shows up. Why the disguise?" "There was no point in sugarcoating it. Because I'm a coward who didn't trust the woman I love, and I thought testing her was smarter than being vulnerable." Alex's laugh turned into another cough. "At least you're honest about being an idiot. Sit down, mate. You look like you're about to bolt." Kingsley sat in the worn armchair beside the bed, Tina perching on the arm beside him. This close, he could see how much the illness had stolen from Alex. The way his clothes hung on a frame that had once been athletic, the purple shadows under his eyes, the medical port visible at his collarbone. "I didn't know," Kingsley said quietly. "About you, about any of this. She never told me." "I know. She wouldn't." Alex reached for Tina's hand. "My sister has this pathological need to fix everything herself. Been that way since Mum and Dad died. She was 23, I was 18, and she just took over. Put herself through the rest of university while making sure I ate properly and did my homework. Worked 2 jobs so I could focus on my A-levels. Got me into Imperial on scholarship, but even then, she was still working herself to death to cover what the scholarship didn't." "Alex," Tina's voice was thick with emotion. "Let me finish. You never let me say this stuff." Alex's eyes were bright with tears and determination. "When I got sick the first time, she paid for everything the NHS didn't cover. Experimental drugs, private specialists, alternative therapies. Used her entire inheritance. I told her not to, told her to save it for her own life, but you know Tina, stubborn as hell. Wonder where she gets that, Kingsley murmured, earning a weak smile from Alex. When I relapsed, I saw what it did to her. Watched her break a little bit every time the doctors said the standard treatments weren't working. There's this experimental therapy in Germany, crazy expensive, not even approved here yet, but it's my only real chance. Alex looked at Kingsley directly. She's been killing herself to pay for it. And before you ask why she didn't tell you, let me tell you what she told me. She said she'd spent her whole life being the girl who needed things, who couldn't make it on her own. When she met you, she finally got to be someone different, someone who had it together, who brought something to the relationship besides problems and bills. She was terrified that asking for help would make you see her as just another person after your money. The words settled into Kingsley's chest like stones. I made her feel that way. Every time I talked about people who'd used me, every time I was suspicious of someone's motives, I was telling her that needing help meant you couldn't be trusted. Bit of both, probably, Alex said with the brutal honesty of someone who didn't have time for politeness. She's got her own issues with asking for help. You've got your own issues with trusting people. Put you together, and you get 18 months of secrets and suffering instead of a 5-minute conversation that could have fixed everything. Tina was crying now, silent tears tracking down her face. Kingsley pulled her down into his lap, holding her while Alex watched with an expression that was equal parts protective and approving. The Kozlovs, Alex said after a moment. That's the thing I'm really angry about, T. Not that you didn't tell him, but that you went to those bastards. Do you have any idea what could have happened? What could still happen? I didn't have a choice. You did. You could have asked your incredibly wealthy fiancé for help. You could have taken out a proper loan from a bank. You could have started a fundraiser, sold your car, a million things that weren't borrowing from criminals. Alex's voice rose as much as his weakened state allowed. I'm dying, Tina. That's shit, but it's true. But I'm not worth you dying too, or getting hurt, or spending the rest of your life in debt to people who break kneecaps for a living. You're worth everything, Tina said fiercely. You're my baby brother. You're all I have left of mum and dad. You're supposed to finish your PhD and cure cancer and get married and give me nieces and nephews to spoil. You're not supposed to die at 25 because I couldn't figure out how to save you. The grief in her voice was devastating. Kingsley held her tighter, looking at Alex over her head, and saw his own helplessness reflected back. The German therapy, Kingsley said. How much does it cost? Total. Don't, Tina tried to pull away, but he held firm. How much, Alex? Alex hesitated, then said, £400,000. 3 rounds of treatment over 6 months, plus travel, accommodation, follow-up care. But mate, you can't just. Yes, I can. I'm going to. And before either of you argues, let me be clear, this isn't charity. This isn't me swooping in to save the day. This is me being part of this family, which means Alex's problems are my problems. His medical bills are my medical bills. His chance at survival is my responsibility to help provide. Kingsley, Tina's voice broke. No, listen. Both of you. He made sure he had their attention. I've spent my entire adult life trying to avoid being used, trying to make sure every relationship was fair and balanced and nobody took advantage of me. But that's not how family works. Family isn't balanced. Sometimes one person needs more, and the others give it, and later it's someone else's turn to need. That's not using, that's love. Easy to say when you're the one with the money, Alex said, but his eyes were hopeful despite his words. True. But it's also true that money is the least important thing I have. You know what I can't buy. Kingsley looked between them. Trust. Honesty. A partner who loves me enough to destroy herself rather than risk me thinking she's after my wealth. A future brother-in-law who's brutally honest about my character flaws. Those things are worth infinitely more than bank balances. Alex studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. But I'm paying you back. No. Yes. Even if it takes my whole life, even if it's 20 quid a month, I'm paying you back. Because you're right, family isn't about keeping score. But I'm also not going to start this relationship by taking £500,000 from my sister's fiancé and calling it love. I'm going to take it as a loan, pay it back as I can, and build a relationship based on mutual respect. Deal. It was absurd. It would take Alex decades to repay that amount on a researcher's salary. But Kingsley understood what he was really asking. For the dignity of not being a charity case, for the autonomy to contribute, for the respect of being seen as an equal despite the circumstances. Deal, Kingsley agreed. 20 quid a month. No interest. No timeline. And you're coming to family dinners every Sunday once you're well enough. Insufferable posh family dinners where everyone talks about property values and investments. Probably. Perfect. I'll wear my imperial hoodie and talk about working-class solidarity. Alex grinned, and for a moment, Kingsley could see the brilliant, cheeky student he'd been before cancer. Tina was sobbing in earnest now, her face pressed into Kingsley's shoulder. He held her while she broke apart and reformed, years of carrying everything alone finally cracking open to let someone else help bear the weight. There's still the Kozlov problem, Alex said quietly. They're not going to just let this go. I know. Kingsley met his eyes over Tina's head. I'm handling it. How? Honestly. Directly. And with enough lawyers to make them realize that threatening my family is very, very bad for their health. The meeting with the Kozlov brothers happened 2 days later, this time in the conference room at Ashford Global headquarters. Kingsley had insisted on home territory, and he'd brought reinforcements: Richard Chen, his CFO, Melissa Park, his lead counsel, and David Chen, Tina's former boss, who turned out to have a background in international criminal law before switching to non-profit work. Victor and Dmitry Kozlov sat across the polished mahogany table, their suits expensive but slightly off, knockoffs trying to pass as genuine, much like their entire operation. Mr. Ashford, Victor began, all false warmth. I'm surprised you wanted another meeting. I thought we'd been quite clear about our terms. Your terms were extortion, Melissa said crisply. And we have documentation to prove it. The compound interest structure violates UK lending laws. The collateral agreements were signed under duress. The threats against Mr. Whitmore constitute assault. Would you like me to continue? Dimitri's jaw clenched. Miss Whitmore entered the agreement voluntarily. Miss Whitmore entered the agreement desperately, which you exploited knowingly. David slid a folder across the table. We've been in contact with 15 other individuals who borrowed from your organization under similar circumstances. They're prepared to testify about your practices, your threats, and your methods of enforcement. This is harassment, Victor said, but his voice had lost its confidence. No, Kingsley said quietly. This is what happens when you threaten my family. Here's how this is going to work. I'm paying off Miss Whitmore's debt in full, the original amount, not your inflated fees and fake interest. £150,000, wired to your account within the hour. In exchange, you're going to destroy every document connecting you to Tina Whitmore, Alexander Whitmore, or myself. You're going to forget we exist. And if we refuse? Then Melissa gives this folder to the Serious Fraud Office, David gives his testimony about your lending practices, and Richard ensures that every property you own or operate in London faces the most rigorous financial investigation the tax authority can provide. Kingsley leaned forward. I built my empire from nothing, gentlemen. I know exactly how people like you operate because I grew up around the Newcastle version of you. The difference is, I got smart instead of criminal. And now I have resources you can't begin to match. You're threatening us, Dimitri said flatly. I'm offering you a choice. Take the money, walk away, and continue operating your nasty little business somewhere outside my sphere of influence. Or fight me, and discover that I can afford better lawyers, better investigators, and better connections than you can ever hope to buy. Kingsley's voice was ice. You picked the wrong family to squeeze. Victor and Dimitri exchanged looks, some wordless conversation happening in the language of brothers and criminals. Finally, Victor nodded. The original debt. 150. We destroy all documents. And you don't attend our wedding, Kingsley added. In fact, you forget you ever heard our names. Agreed. The wire transfer took 6 minutes. The signed agreements took another 20. By the time the Kozlov brothers left Ashford Global's gleaming headquarters, Tina's debt had ceased to exist, and Kingsley had made it abundantly clear that his family was permanently off limits. That was terrifying and impressive in equal measure, David said after they'd gone. Remind me never to get on your bad side. You helped Tina when I didn't even know she needed help, Kingsley said. You're permanently on my good side. Richard closed his laptop with a satisfied click. I'm putting together the payment arrangements for Alex's treatment. We'll funnel it through the Ashford Foundation Medical Fund, cleaner that way, and it establishes precedent for helping other young adults with catastrophic medical costs. If we're doing this, we might as well do it properly. Make sure Alex knows it's structured as a loan, Kingsley said. He's insisting on repaying it. That'll take him about 50 years, Melissa observed. I know. But his dignity matters more than the money. After they'd all left, Kingsley sat alone in his office, looking out at the London skyline. Somewhere in that sprawl, Tina was at the literacy centre, actually relaxing for the first time in months. Alex was at the hospital, beginning pre-treatment consultations with the German specialist they'd flown in. The wedding planner was adjusting their timeline. They'd postponed by 2 months to give Alex time to get strong enough to walk Tina down the aisle. Everything was messy and complicated and real. And Kingsley had never been happier. His phone rang. Tina's name, Tina's face, Tina's voice. Hey, you done being a terrifying billionaire for the day? For now. How's the center? Good. Really good, actually. I told my boss about everything, the real everything, and she's giving me a temporary leave to focus on Alex's treatment and, processing the fact that my fiancé disguised himself to spy on me. Still apologizing for that. I know. I'm still processing my own lies, so we're even. A pause. Kingsley. Yeah. Thank you. For handling the Kozlovs. For paying for Alex's treatment. For not making me feel like a failure for needing help. Thank you for trusting me enough to let me in. Finally. Finally, she agreed. So, about the wedding. 2 months from now. October. Alex gives you away, or we postpone again. October's good. Gives us time to actually build something real instead of just performing for each other. Another pause, this one charged with something softer. I love you, Kingsley Ashford from Newcastle. The real you, not the disguise or the billionaire armor or the carefully constructed image. Just you. His throat tightened. I love you too, Tina Whitmore from Manchester. Every messy, stubborn, secretive, beautiful part of you. We're going to be okay, aren't we? Better than okay. We're going to be real. 8 weeks later. The October wedding took place not at Thornbury Castle but at a small church in Manchester where Tina's parents had married 30 years earlier. No magazine coverage, no celebrities, just 200 people who actually knew and loved them. Alex walked Tina down the aisle, thin but alive, his color better than it had been in months. The German treatment was working, not a cure yet, but hope where there had been none. He wore his imperial hoodie under his suit jacket, just to make Kingsley's traditional family squirm, and his grin was pure mischief. Kingsley stood at the altar in his Tom Ford suit, but with his dad's old watch on his wrist, the cheap Timex that kept terrible time but meant everything. No disguises. No armor. Just himself, terrified and hopeful and completely in love. When Tina reached him, her dress simple and elegant and paid for with money that wasn't borrowed or desperate, she whispered, "No running away. No running. You. No secrets. No more martyring myself instead of asking for help. No more testing you instead of trusting you." The vicar cleared his throat, amused. Shall we begin? The vows they'd written were honest to the point of painful. Kingsley promised to trust even when it was scary, to ask questions instead of making assumptions, to remember that being vulnerable wasn't weakness. Tina promised to let herself be helped, to speak her needs instead of suffering silently, to remember that asking for support wasn't the same as being used. They promised to be messy and honest instead of perfect and distant. They promised to see each other, really see each other, every single day. When the vicar pronounced them married, the kiss was soft and real and tasted like hope and second chances. At the reception in a local pub Tina's father had loved, Alex gave a speech that made everyone laugh and cry in equal measure. He talked about his sister's stubborn love, about Kingsley's terrifying but effective approach to problem-solving, about the fact that they'd almost destroyed each other through fear and pride before figuring out that love required the courage to be completely known. To messy, honest love, Alex concluded, raising his glass. May we all be brave enough to drop our disguises and let someone see us truly. To messy, honest love, the crowd echoed. Later, as Kingsley and Tina swayed on the makeshift dance floor, she said, "Think we'll make it? For real this time. I think we've got a fighting chance. We've already survived the worst. We tested our relationship to destruction and chose to rebuild. If we can come back from that, we can handle whatever else comes. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. That's when honesty matters most. Looking back on your own relationships, with partners, family, or friends, when has vulnerability brought you closer than perfection ever could? Share your story below. You never know who might need to hear it. Tina leaned her head against his chest, and Kingsley felt the rightness of it settle into his bones. Not the fairy tale perfection they'd been performing for each other, but something better: partnership, authenticity, the terrifying beauty of being fully known and choosing each other anyway. 6 months later, Alex's cancer went into remission. He started his PhD, annoying his professors by questioning everything and bringing working-class perspective to their ivory tower theories. He paid Kingsley back £20 on the first of every month, religiously, and came to Sunday dinners where he debated economics with Richard and made Melissa laugh until she cried. Tina went back to the literacy center and started a scholarship fund for adults returning to education, funded partially by Ashford Global, but mostly by her own fundraising efforts because, as she told Kingsley, she needed to build things with her own hands too. Kingsley learned to ask for help, to admit uncertainty, to trust that being vulnerable didn't make him weak. He established the Ashford Medical Fund, helping families facing catastrophic healthcare costs, and he put Tina and Alex on the board because their perspective mattered more than his money. They fought sometimes, real fights about real things, not the careful politeness of people afraid to disturb a fragile peace. They learned to repair, to apologize, to choose each other again after every argument. They built a life that was messy and honest and real. And on their first anniversary, sitting in the Ladbroke Grove flat that Alex had kept, for when I need to remember how far we've come, the three of them raised a glass. To disguises, Kingsley said. To secrets, Tina added. To the courage to drop them both, Alex finished. They drank cheap wine in a small flat, surrounded by photos of the life they'd almost lost and the life they'd chosen to build instead, and Kingsley thought about that boy from Newcastle who'd been so afraid of being used that he'd almost destroyed his own happiness. That boy was gone now, replaced by a man who understood that true wealth wasn't measured in bank balances but in the people who saw you completely and loved you anyway. A man who'd learned that real love required taking off every disguise, even the ones you wore to protect yourself. A man who discovered that being fully known was terrifying and essential and the only way to build something that would last. Outside the window, London hummed with millions of stories. People hiding and revealing, protecting and risking, disguising and discovering. But in that small flat, 3 people who'd chosen honesty over safety raised their glasses one more time. To love, Tina said softly, her hand in Kingsley's, her brother beside her, her future uncertain but finally, beautifully real. To the kind that survives the truth. To love, they echoed. And meant it with every broken, healed, honest piece of their hearts. We've journeyed through Kingsley and Tina's story, from disguises and deception to brutal honesty and redemption. Their path reminds us that real love isn't about perfection. It's about the courage to be seen, flaws and all. So, here's the final question for you. What disguise have you been wearing, with yourself or others, that's preventing you from experiencing real connection? And what would it take for you to finally take it off? Share your thoughts, your stories, your own journeys from disguise to authenticity. Your vulnerability might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Drop a comment below, and let's keep this conversation going. And if this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more emotionally powerful stories that remind us what it means to be beautifully, messily human. Thanks for watching.